What's up, YouTube? LTH back with another video. 713 to buy your city and win the damn building once again. So, what shall I talk about this video? I know exactly what I can talk about. The upcoming NFL draft of 2025. Or should I talk about some Texans players that I believe shall be on the hot seat before the 2025 NFL season starts? Or preseason, I would say. Or, oh wait, yeah. Let's talk about some Texans players I believe should be on the hot seat going into next season. Meaning, I'll officially talk about, who the Texans should select at 25 or whether should trade down in another video. So, for a hot seat, for the Texans hot seat, it's going to be on mostly offense. So, and an offensive player I have in mind is, Xavier Hutchinson. I mean, yeah, he made a big catch in that playoff game against the Chargers. I mean, he showed his potential, but, just haven't produced a lot. Whenever the receiving corps was dealt with key injuries, with, Tank Dell, I mean, I know part of it, is Stroud not having enough time to find open receivers, but, excuse me, I just feel like Xavier Hutchinson could have done a lot more, at times, whenever key players were out, Stephon Diggs and, Tank Dell, man, I just feel like he could have done a lot more. Same with John Mechie, who I also have on the hot seat. I mean, yeah, his best game was against the Detroit Lions, obviously blowing that damn game. Though I picked the Lions to win that game, but Mechie did show flash in that game, which was his best game of 2024. I mean, yes, I still salute him for beating leukemia, but like Hutchinson, I just feel like he missed opportunities to step up when it counted most. Production, he has the talent, don't get me wrong, but I just feel like the production hasn't been there. The production. I mean, wouldn't be surprised, which was, in my opinion, the reason why we signed that receiver from Miami, Justin Watson, and of course trading for Christian Kirk. I mean, yes, I still see the Texans drafting a wide receiver, in the later round, the second and third round at best. But as far as, I just feel like Mechie could have done a lot more. I mean, I would like to keep both, but if I had to choose one, I'll go with John Mechie. But just like Xavier Hutchinson, both John Mechie and Xavier Hutchinson is going to have to show something, a lot more something at that, if they plan on not only getting off, but staying off the hot seat going forward. So there's my two Texans players that should be on the hot seat going into next season. Next up on my list, Dameon Pierce. Had that promising rookie season, had damn near 1,000 yards had he not got hurt. That was, of course, under a bad offensive coordinator in Pep Hamilton, his long season as Texans OC. And, on the verge of, reaching that mark. Unfortunately, he got hurt against the Cowboys. And, again, years 2 and 3, I get it, the new offensive scheme and, new coordinator, and Bobby Slowick, who's no longer Texans OC, and of course, Devin Singletary had to, be the lead back because of his lack of production of Dameon Pierce. But on special teams, he showed flashes. He did return a kickoff for a TD. had some good kickoff returns, in 24 versus Tennessee, and a kick return for a TD versus Cleveland in 2023 in his second year. But man, as much, and I ain't gonna lie, I had high hopes for him too. Damian Pierce and David Singletary being a 1-2 punch. But man, I want to say that his production hasn't been there, but it's the utilization. Slowick, wasn't able to utilize Damian Pierce effectively in the running game, which was why his production hasn't been on point, as I would have, not just me, but every Texans fan would have hoped for, going into year 2. In year 3, pretty much the same, in my opinion. And yeah, he had some big runs, versus New England and Tennessee, for TDs. Two of his best games Pierce has had. But, and yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if the Texans draft a running back for sure in a later round. But it may not necessarily erase the fact that Pierce is going to have to show something, or I don't see him being on a roster. It's enough that Joe Mixon's already been signed to an extension. So, still glad that Joe Mixon is a Texan. In case, Houston couldn't sign Saquon last season, who bought his ass off with the Eagles in 24, along with winning the Lombardi behind that beast-ass O-line of the Philadelphia Eagles. And by the way, looking back at it, let me get off topic, but looking back at last offseason, I was kind of glad that the Texans didn't sign Saquon, because had that happened, Saquon would not have gotten 2K yards behind that Texans O-line, considering how trash that O-line was. I see Saquon get like 1,000 or 1,300 yards at best, or even 1,500. If, that's just how I look at it. But back to Damian Pierce, though. I can see him getting another opportunity. It's gonna be locked in the battle for a roster spot. But if that were to happen, hopefully Nick Caley could use him a lot better, going into 2025, But I'll put Damian Pierce on the hot seat going into 25. Another player that I have on the hot seat going into next season, it's gonna Juice Scruggs and Jared Patterson. Both are centers, and Scruggs, doesn't have enough strength to be a guard. Both linemen gave up a combined of 8 sacks in 24. But ain't no telling who's gonna end up starting in 25 as the center. And yeah, I do see the Texans drafting interior O-line because, and of course another left tackle, because that's the area that they need addressing the most. Considering the fact that Stroud was sacked up 54 times. Couldn't protect the quarterback. So I wouldn't be surprised if, Juice Scruggs or Jared Patterson are going to be battling for who gets to start at center. But regardless on who starts at center, both going to have something to prove for sure. How effective they can be, either as backup or a starter, because, and that was, in my opinion, that's the reason I got them on the hot seat going into 25, because, yes, they may have showed flashes, but, just haven't lived up to the second round expectations, Both players were drafted in the second round, but just got to live up to the second round draft pick. Same could be said about first round draft pick, living up to the hype as a first round draft pick. So, yeah, I got those players, on the hot seat going into 25. Last but not least, Jimmy Ward. Jimmy Ward. I mean, yeah, I know, he had a much better year. He had 2 interceptions, but if there was anything, a reason why I put Jimmy Ward on the hot seat for 25 upcoming, it would be because of his inability to stay healthy. I mean, he's a baller. Don't get me wrong, he's still a baller. He can still ball, but the question mark on him is staying on the field consistently. Because ever since Jordan coming to the Texans, I believe, he's missed a total of 14 games. The last 2 seasons he's been a part of the Texans. That ain't really a good look. Not a good look. And I understand we traded for, CJ, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, in which I'm still trying to process, by the way, as of April 19, 2025. It's been a month since that happened, a month and 7 days. But Jimmy Ward, there was a reason for me putting him on a hot seat, based on number of games he's missed, due to injury. So you want to get off and he is, last season was originally supposed to be his last season, but because of an extension he got, and I did make a video about that, 2025 is pretty much, his last season, as a member of the Texans. So I kind of wouldn't be surprised if they, add sneak a safety in the draft, because of the fact that Jimmy Ward is pretty much getting up there in age, because, I mean, who knows? But if Jimmy Ward, can stay healthy in 25, hey, that'll be great. But because of the number of games he's missed the last 2 years, I say that it's truly anybody's guess for sure. Anyone's guess. Anybody's guess for sure. Do I want to see, Jimmy Ward play a whole season at 25? Yes. But isn't guaranteed? No. But as the saying goes, only time will tell. But as far as an honorable mention, who should be on the hot seat? Dalton Schultz. Got a contract extension. He was pretty solid in 2023. But got a contract extension. First year of that contract extension, didn't live up, to that extension. The first year of that extension, the numbers, had a reduction, regressed, pretty much regressed. Meaning the numbers wasn't consistent as it should be, as it should have been. So, as I posted in post said, Dalton Schultz, got to bounce back, or he's pretty much a goner. Got an extension, and there's no excuse to why he don't bounce back in 25. And knowing Nick Caley, he's so effective with tight ends. So Dalton Schultz got to have a huge 2025 season for sure. If he has another bad season, there's a chance he's out of here. I already re-signed Irv Smith Jr. and got Brevin Jordan coming back from his ACL injury he suffered last season versus Chicago. And And speaking of Brevin Jordan, I'm rooting for him to bounce back, though, after that injury he suffered. And the tight end room was pretty much stacked. I will admit to that, but doesn't change the fact that Dalton Schultz got to bounce back. But because of how his numbers look like in recent years, that's a reason why I got him on the hot seat going in for 25. As my honorable mention on Texas players I believe deserves to be on the hot seat. So, there's that. But y'all let me know in the comment section of what Texans players y'all have on the hot seat going into 2025. So, there that is. Till my next video, or the Houston checking on the body here, 713 to Bio City. Go Houston Texans.